It's time for another Two Women Talking. I am Tomboy Liana.
I am Girly Girl, Song W. Erickson.
That worked pretty well. This is Two Women Talking. We're going to do a multi-part one. We're going to split a bigger topic into smaller topics. We're talking toxicity. This is going to be a three-part series on toxicity. Part 1 is going to be toxic women. Part 2 is going to be toxic men, and part 3 is going to be toxic relationships. And Song had the good idea to start with toxic women because society tends to start with toxic men. But I think we all know some toxic women, right? I know you have thoughts. Song. But let's start with the definition of toxicity, because unfortunately, a lot of toxic people use the idea of toxicity to be toxic and get away with it. So I want to make sure there's a really clearly defined definition, so that if it comes right down to it, we can test, okay, on this 3-part checklist, does the person, so toxic people, male or female, they are self-centered, manipulative, abusive, and lacking in empathy. They drain others' energy by constantly demanding attention, sympathy, or validation. And that is not the same as wanting attention, sympathy, or validation. They demand it. And toxic people tend to disrespect emotional and physical boundaries. That's a psychological definition from Psychology Today's Song. Do you agree with that definition?
I do. And one thing I think I would add, though it does kind of fall into the others, is also controlling behavior.
Yeah, I think that's the summary of manipulative and abusive.
True.
Yeah, I think that it is definitely a control thing. The lack of respecting boundaries, control, demanding attention, sympathy, or validation, control, and then self-centered, manipulative, abusive, lacking in empathy. I mean, the control is because they lack in empathy, right? They really don't care how other people are feeling about something as long as they get what they want. So,
and oh boy, doesn't my big example fit all of those?
Yeah, do you want to start with Times Person of the Year on the toxic women discussion?
You know what? Let's do that. She got Person of the Year. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, this is, and I want to be clear off the top, neither of us personally knows Times Person of the Year. It's about her image, and that's all we can really talk about. And I do think that's relevant because girls are modeling themselves after these celebrities. And so what the media elevates and criticizes is very, very important in terms of the formation of self for women of all ages. So, okay, Song, go for it. Times Person of the Year.
Taylor Swift. And if you've been around a while, you know this is one of my pet topics.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will go, yeah, Tay-Tay's toxic, but let's go through it, because it's really easy to say a celebrity is self-centered. It's really easy to say, oh, she's lacking in empathy. That's the image thing. Oh, she's a celebrity. It's really hard to tell how much attention she demands and how much attention is part of the job. I think it's that manipulative and lacking in empathy element that really comes through, at least in Taylor Swift's lyrics. Is that where you're going with this?
Well, a mix of the lyrics and also just stuff she's done. But, you know, I do want to start off on a technically positive note. I've seen people pushing back, saying it was a bizarre decision and that she didn't deserve. Yes, she did.
Oh, yeah.
If you're surprised that she's Person of the Year, shut up. No, you're not. Because she dominated this year. She had the most successful movie. She had the most successful concert ever. She's been everywhere. She affected local economies wherever she showed up. She's increased football viewership.
Yeah, and I mean, somebody could argue so did Beyonce.
It wasn't to the same scale, though.
Right. I mean, there's something. Sorry, go ahead.
Even in the Person of the Year interview, she was talking about how, there are so many stadium tours this year. I don't know why people are pitting us against each other. Well, one, because you two are the two big female celebrities, but it's not even a competition when you actually compare
Mm-hmm.
them. It's
Mm-hmm.
the Eras tour wiped out. And you know what? I saw the concert film. It's absolutely spectacular.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Just the costuming, the theming, everything. It's fantastic. It's incredibly well done. As a businesswoman, you have to respect her, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, she even admits that a lot of her ideas come from other people in her life. And see, the thing about Taylor is the reason she's a great example for toxic traits, especially the way they manifest in women, is because they're so big. And maybe it's because of celebrity, maybe it's just because of who she is. I would say it's a bit of both. But the examples, when you look at them, are very easy to crystallize and point out as examples. So,
Yeah,
as yeah, go on.
if you just break down the lyrics to Anti-Hero, this is where I keep coming back with her. I cannot get through this song.
No.
I can't get through this song. I keep trying and I turn it off because it is, when you write a lyric, all the people I've ghosted stand there in the room. There is a self-awareness that, one day I'll watch as you're leaving because you got tired of my scheming. She's confessing to it. She's aware.
On the same album, she had a line where it's, no one wanted to play with me as a little kid, so I've been scheming like a criminal ever since to make them love me and make it seem easy. I'm only cryptic and Machiavellian because I care.
Wow.
I'm sitting there going,
that's up there with, did you hear my covert narcissism I disguise as altruism? Like, is this a character, or is she doing a Nicki Minaj here, or
she claims it is, but I just don't buy it because everything about her narrative is so controlled. And
yeah,
it's I told you about this last night when we were kind of prepping for this. So 2009, many people may remember Taylor Swift MTV Music Awards. She gets Best Female Album. Kanye West comes in, interrupts, Beyonce had one of the best records of all time. Okay. And everyone feels sorry for little 19-year-old Taylor who just got her time interrupted. So 2017, I believe, Kanye had a vulgar line about how he could sleep with her and he was the one who made her famous. And there was a bunch of backlash to it. How dare he say that? And Taylor is playing the victim and she's giving speeches like, people will try to take your fame and claim that it was their responsibility, and she's getting all self-righteous about it. And then Kim Kardashian drops a recording of a phone call between West and Swift where she approved the lyric.
Yeah.
And so she has talked about how it was so violating that, this call, and yes, the call was illegally recorded, but also you were on the phone with a Kardashian. I feel like if you answer the phone from any of them, that's an automatic consent to be recorded.
But that's also so typical with toxic people, right? They are so good at making the debate miss the point. Whether or not it was illegally recorded, it was authentic. She consented to the lyric.
Yes. And so in the Person of the Year interview, she talks about how she had to move to a foreign country and she didn't leave her house for a year. But anyone who was paying attention, this was when Reputation happened, her Reputation album.
Wait, because someone said I could still sleep with her?
And that they revealed I think it was dropping the call.
Oh, okay.
That ruined it because it's suddenly she's not the innocent victim.
And so she moved to, wow.
Let me just say, her that was right when she got together with Joe Alwyn, if I
No.
remember correctly.
Okay.
So that might be why she moved to England.
Yeah, I was gonna say she would. This is
Yeah.
all just that is a story. I forgot it happened.
Mhm.
I admit. And yeah, okay, it's terrible for the person going through it at the time when you're the subject of public derision. Trust me, I've been that person numerous times. But still, celebrities live in a bubble. It is very easy to not listen, not turn on the news. You don't have to run your own social media feeds. You have people for all of that. It does really seem like she can't stop.
No. And even like in the interview, she talked about the timeline for her most recent relationship with Travis Kelsey. I don't know. And the
Football
timeline,
guy.
yeah, the timeline doesn't make sense. Because like apparently he mentioned her on a podcast, and that's how she found out, and they got together. And it was 12 days before she showed up at one of his games. But she's saying in the interview, oh, yeah, no, we had a bunch of time and we were a couple by the time I went to the first game. That wasn't our first date. And I'm like, I'm very glad you consider 12 days to be a long time. I didn't realize you were a time lord.
Okay.
So it's these little things where she puts it in interviews, she puts it in lyrics, and at this point she's so big she gets away with it. But it's all these little things where I mentioned in another one where it's like the end of her Joe Alwyn relationship. The song about that is, didn't you see the storm clouds in my eyes? Didn't you realize that something was wrong? And I'm like, did you say anything? Did you tell him there was a problem? And all these little things she puts in a song where it makes it someone else's fault, and she paints herself as the victim. And
Right.
it's like, you're not. Like,
And that's the critical thing. She's at this point, I mean, she really still does sound very young.
she
I
does.
forget how old she is now. She's old enough to know.
33.
I know that, and I'm like, what? I have to remind myself of that
Yeah.
because I think I said another podcast that the problem with Taylor Swift is she started off as the girl in the song who was ignored by guys because they were interested in the cheer captain who wears short skirts
Mm-hmm.
and high heels. And now she's the one wearing, well, she likes to wear no pants. But I'm okay with that. I am anti pants, but she is the girl in the short shorts and the high heels.
Mm-hmm.
And at it's not the typical, teen ingenue to adult transition where you have to go a little crazy so people stop seeing you as a kid.
And that's part of what it was. People talk about, oh, it was misogyny that people gave her such a hard time for all her boyfriends and all her breakups. I don't think that was it. I was watching already at that point after Speak Now, and when we got to Red, where critics were starting to say, look, it was one thing when she was a teenager, but she's getting older now. How many of these relationships can she go through and claim to be the victim when it doesn't look like she's learning anything?
Yeah, that's a nuanced thing. I remember there was a thing a while back where somebody name checked her on a TV show.
Ginny and Georgia.
Was
I
that
remember
it?
that.
And
Mm-hmm.
she had another call attention to herself moment. And at that time, I actually felt sorry for her. And actually, Eileen, shout out to Eileen. Eileen is amazing. Eileen is the graphic designer on all my YouTube stuff, except for
Mm-hmm.
the thumbnail we did for this, which Song did. But yeah, she pointed out that it was in character. It was a teenager being a brat. It wasn't really about Taylor Swift. It was a character moment. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, on the one hand, I don't think the problem is that Taylor Swift sleeps with a lot of men. I have no issues with that. We need to stop that. The
Mm-hmm.
issue is she is not adult about what happens after they break up.
And that's the thing, because like recently I've been revisiting Dido's music. And
Okay.
Dido was a singer in the early 2000s. You know, she did White Flag.
Yeah.
Her song Thank You was sampled in Eminem's Stan. That's how
Yeah.
most people know of her. But
Yeah.
it's like she covers a lot of the same topics with breakups. And
Yeah.
I would argue a lot of it is even more hard hitting, because like she even has a song that was her ruminating about her friend's abortion. And it's very respectfully done, but it's like it is pretty hard hitting topics, but you don't know who they're about. And I think that's one of the big differences with a lot of artists who sing about themselves and Taylor Swift, who, you know, she puts hints in her lyrics of who the song is about. And, you know, I respect her re-recording her music. I understand why she
Yeah.
felt so betrayed when Scooter Braun got her stuff. I do think she made a bit of a big deal out of it, but it's like I respect the re-recording and all that. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like with each album, she releases new tracks that were initially deleted from the album. So she calls them out of the vault tracks. And the most recent album she re-released was 1989, which is the Harry Styles album.
Oh, I forgot about Harry Styles.
And one, she was 22, he was 18.
Okay.
Nowadays, if we saw a relationship like that, people would automatically put up red flags.
Wow, are we that? 22
I
and 18 is a problem?
I think so. Some people are really like, I think it would be the extreme bit that would really put up red flags. But for me, I'm still like, okay, that's interesting. But one of the songs, it's literally, you grew your hair long, you got new icons. I miss the old you. You didn't have to change it. I'm like, if a guy said that to
Oh
a
yeah.
woman, because that is one of the first signs of a controlling toxic partner is, oh, I miss the old you. It's like, I think the CW show about Mary Queen of Scots was called Rain, and it's horribly inaccurate, but there's a line from that where I believe it's her mother-in-law tells her, I miss the girl you were. And Mary says, many will. She was easier to kill.
Well, yeah.
And so it's like, when I've been thinking about that, I miss the old days. Things didn't have to change. I'm like, oh, God, that is shivers down my spine.
Well, and why do we have to know that was about Harry Styles? Like, I mean, okay, Adele only does breakup albums, so she doesn't do an album until something goes bad in her life. But you listen to those lyrics, and she's apologizing to her son. In song. She takes responsibility, but I mean, it's pretty obvious who Adele's writing about, because it was her ex-husband. It was the father of her kids. You can't hide that. But at the same time, it seemed aware that her kid is going to be listening to this, and be very careful, because, you know, people are going to have thoughts. And that's the challenge with somebody like Taylor Swift or a Britney Spears, or all the whole good girls gone bad brands out there. Even someone like Selena Gomez, that people have very, very strong thoughts about, and I don't quite understand how and it's almost like they're leveraging the fact that sexism is real to dodge legitimate criticism. Is a cliche. It dodge even appropriate scrutiny that a man in that position would also undergo. You know,
because it's like, this was before my time, and you might know a little bit more about it, but like Marvin Gaye did an album all about his divorce, and as I understand, that wasn't well received initially.
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole thing about who You're So Vain is about. And then the whole was it Hey Jude that was originally about Julian Lennon?
I think it was for her son.
Yeah, it was originally Hey Jewel instead of Hey Jude.
Ah.
Yeah.
The other one is like, Robin Thicke also did a divorce album, and granted, that was awful, but like it also got lambasted for being extremely, well, cringy.
I mean, it was funny because I always thought the cringe with Robin Thicke was deliberate. I thought that was his shtick. And then when people started saying no, it's not, I'm like, really? I am so checked out of this stuff. And every so often I stick my head back in and go, what are we doing to people putting these people up on pedestals, you know?
I know, right? But let's, because I realize not everyone who listens to us is as interested in pop music as I am. But let's bring this to something that's I know you care about, and the audience will care a bit more about. Because again, when we were talking about this, I pointed out Taylor Swift. A lot of the issues with her, it's basically the same issues you have with Shadowheart from
Well,
Baldur's Gate
because
3.
it's a type, right? It is a
Mm-hmm.
checklist. Because, and this is my problem with demonizing the femme fatale in literature, right? Because Taylor Swift is a femme fatale, but
Mm-hmm. She's gotten there.
she's
Interesting
skinny.
switch.
Yeah, but she's skinny and she has no boobs and she has no ass. And you know, they do her makeup, and I don't know what's with her hair, but they just it's like budget femme fatale, and so people don't see that's what she is. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Oh, that was glorious. That was absolutely
that's what
glorious.
pisses me off. As long as she got no boobs and no butt, you miss the fatale part. She is
Mm-hmm.
bad for you. She will get you into trouble. And women like her, and then the whole Baldur's Gate 3 thing. Congratulations to Larian for winning Game of the Year. I don't want people to think this is a bashing of the game.
No,
It's just that it is a game. It is a game where everyone is toxic to some degree or
and
another.
I've said I look forward to the day we get a thirsty RPG that doesn't have all the red flags the Baldur's Gate 3 characters
And
do.
and let's face it, the minute you have women openly having sex, it becomes this toxic soup because there is still this sense that women are giving up something. They have giving something to the man through having sex. It is a loss, which is weird when you think about the mechanics of
Mm-hmm.
the situation. You know,
It's
it's
the other way around.
it's the other way around mechanically. So what the hell happened? And I do think that because we ban, I mean, you see somebody like, you know, I'm going to mention Megan Thee Stallion, because Megan Thee Stallion is like the complete polar opposite of Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
She was somebody who deliberately embraces, well, she calls it the ratchet. You know, her whole thing about the song Savage is the reason it's like ratchet, bougie, classy is that no woman can be one thing all the time.
Mm-mm.
And because Taylor Swift is constantly in that, oh, well, she doesn't have boobs and a butt, so she's classy. So anything she does, she's the victim. Someone did it to her. Whereas because Megan Thee Stallion embraces the twerk, she is constantly considered ratchet. And all she can be, like, if she tries to dress up, if she tries to be classy, people just, oh, she's bougie. She's just trying too hard. She's
Mm-hmm.
moving above her status. And, you know, when we get into the royals, the constant thing about Kate versus Meghan, the whole Meghan Markle thing, the reason a lot of these people get lumped into the same baskets is the whole discourse surrounding them becomes so toxic. You can't separate whether they are a toxic person from the toxicity around them.
And here's the thing about people going like, "Oh, Megan's the bad girl. Catherine is the good girl." Wasn't Catherine a lingerie model when she met William?
The stories coming out of, I mean, the school they went to was called St. Randy's for a reason. Like, they didn't even bother with the virginity tests with her. And you know what? That's fine. I think
She had
she's
another boyfriend before when she met William. She was with someone else.
and good. The most important thing is that somebody is prepared for that life. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that when you get someone like Meghan Markle who is not raised in it, no matter how much you try to crash course prepare her, you can't get your head around it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for her because, she did Suits. She was living in Toronto for years. So, I know some people who know her, and she was very much a ladies who lunch type. She liked having her friends. She liked having, her 3-hour Sunday brunches. And she lost all of that
Mm-hmm.
when she married Harry. And, it's funny we're talking about this after the Prince Charming episode, because marrying a prince in real life is not happily ever after, you know, especially him. This is a guy who thought it was cute to dress up like a Nazi when
Yeah.
he was in college.
And that's the thing, because for me, there's always this question in the back of my mind of like, did did he marry her to spite his family?
I think, based on what I understand, they actually were in love, and this is where I get very cynical and go, whatever that means. Because it seems we've sort of lost the idea of love as an emotional thing.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know the context, when Diana and Charles got engaged, a reporter asked them if they were in love. Diana said yes, and
Yeah.
Charles said whatever that
Yeah, there we
means.
go. Okay. But it really when you get into that rarefied air. The problem with Charles is he unintentionally is so damn on point. Sometimes he says the thing you're not supposed to say.
Charles's mommy issues. And like it's totally
Yeah.
understandable because Elizabeth had to rule a country. And like this is where I think you could make an argument that someone being a queen and a mother is probably not a great combination because she had to focus on ruling a country, even if
Well,
it was mostly symbolic, but she
but
had to.
you also hear the stories of her early marriage to Andrew, and he was running off for entire weekends.
Mhm.
Like that whole thing, yikes. Like, if you actually take away the whole pomp and circumstance and royalty, that family, oh
See,
boy.
see, for me, it's like whenever people complain about the tax money that goes to them, I'm like, okay, but you guys are literally paying them to both be your figureheads and to be always in the public eye. Like,
And they make more money than they spend. We again
yes.
and again and again, they make them more money than they spend. But I kind of derailed because I am trying to be intellectual about the women of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes.
But when the minute I saw the art for that game, I knew we were in for it because there was something decisively missing from the women. Because, of course, now in video games, if you want to have a physically, traditionally sexy woman, the femme fatale, she's got to be a demon, like a literal demon.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, on the box art, it's, the goth girl with bad bangs, the monster girl, and the demon girl.
Mm-hmm.
And the demon girl's not even a character in her own right. She's an appendage to Will.
So is that Karlach?
No, that is a character called Mizora. Karlach is actually an awesome character with nowhere near enough personal story. And surprise, surprise, the one non-toxic woman in the whole party, you physically can't touch her for the first third of the game.
See, and I resent that the non-toxic woman is like I know they're all fighters, but like Karlak is a former soldier, from what I understand.
Well, she's still Karlak is, for people who don't, there's going to be some spoilers in this because we have to do spoilers to make the point.
Yeah.
But Karlak is a soldier in what's called the Blood War,
Okay.
which they've done away with lawful and chaotic alignments in D&D. But back in the day, the Blood War is a battle between the forces of order in hell and the forces of chaos, aka freedom, depending on how you want to look at it, in hell. Though it is chaos in hell because there's no freedom in hell. And so they're constantly battling each other in this war that's constantly fought to a stalemate. Because if anybody wins the Blood War, then hell breaks containment and spills out onto the prime material, and that be bad.
Yeah. And so I do resent that the one non-toxic girl is the soldier.
Yeah, it really does feel like the men. Okay, poor Will.
And to be clear, just to explain my position, it's not that it's not a problem on principle. It's it comes back to I do not feel well represented as an extremely femme woman.
Yeah, it's basic, it's old. The minute, in order for a woman to be likable, she must actively defy some feminine construct.
Mm-hmm.
But I like Shadowheart. That's what I like. Lae'zel. Okay, yes. And here's the problem. This is where we get to the toxic. Again, pulling up the definition: self-centered, manipulative, abusive, lacking in empathy, constantly demanding attention, sympathy, or validation, and disrespect emotional and physical boundaries. Unfortunately, both Lae'zel and Shadowheart check every box there. And I didn't want to see it in Lae'zel, because Lae'zel's another warrior woman, and the challenge with Lae'zel is she's a member of a race called the Githyanki, which are basically Forgotten Realms Klingons. And so there is that very warlike thing. But again, you know, they take warlike and make her sexually aggressive to the point that I couldn't take it anymore. I was so repulsed. And I know some guys love this, which is, this is what we have to have a talk about. I was so repulsed by the constant, you're in pain the next day, you can barely move, every part of your body hurts, and guys treat that as wild sex. What that really is, when it happens every time, is a complete disrespect for someone's physical boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
They do not care if they hurt you. And frankly, with the warrior people, that's stupid, because you can't fight as well the next day.
Exactly.
It's dumb. You know, from a world building perspective, I was just, this is the stupid kind of fantasy that everybody thinks is super hot. And you know, when everything's a fucking rodeo every night, no, it's not hot, it's a red flag. And it is the constant, I mean, it is a bit of a joke that the culture is blunt to the point of being verbally abusive.
Mm-hmm.
I was okay with that. I was, and unfortunately, Lae'zel is also another I can fix her chick,
mm-hmm.
which drives me crazy. And then again, we go to Karlak, whom you literally cannot fix, like bodily. Her heart has been replaced with a machine that is unrepairable.
Yeah.
It can't function outside of Avernus. So the I can't fix her chick in the game is literal. And oh my God, it just gets worse. Because yes, Lae'zel is a product of what we call religious or spiritual abuse. Her entire belief system is based on a lie. That becomes a thing in the game. And so one could make a case that her toxicity is part of her story and that people need a starting point. And that is valid, because Lae'zel's story does go somewhere. I will give her that. Now, the being reasons for her being a toxic person doesn't change the fact that she's a toxic person. And this is very important when we're looking at fantasy and separating it from reality. And, I have a lot of guys say, well, what I want in fiction is not the same as what I want in a real life partner. And while I think that's true to a point, I think there are deeper psychological truths of why do you find this alluring, even though you know it would be bad for you in real life?
That's the important thing, is
Yeah.
it's like it's really important to take a step back and examine something like that.
Yep. I
And
know I do all the
yeah,
time.
it's like, okay, what does this say about me as a person that I'm interested in this?
Yeah. I mean, people say I'm lying about what I find attractive in other people all the time, and I'm not. And because there's so much gaslighting in that regard, I really analyze what I find interesting in characters. And I'm super aware when male characters are toxic, I really need to work to see the toxicity in female characters, precisely because I pour all my sense of being wronged into, you know, fictional characters. I actually, believe it or not, I actually came up with the idea for the one-on-one peer counseling I do from Fall from Grace from Planescape Torment.
Oh yeah, you've mentioned that.
Yeah, because I'm like, she's a thought hooker. And so I'm like, look, I was talking to OnlyFans girls, and they make their money just like Zoom calling guys for a premium.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, they're thought hookers. They're not doing any. I can be a thought hooker. I don't need to be all this like girly pics or anything like that. I'll jump right to the thought hooker.
And actually get something done.
Well, yeah, it doesn't have that oddly who's exploiting who ick. It's totally what it, and I have no problem with OnlyFans girls. It's just really funny that they have to go through all those hoops to essentially provide emotional support for guys that can't seek it out elsewhere.